So now that it's the new year, do you have any New Year's resolutions?
Um, I wouldn't say that I've got any resolutions per se. Um, you?
So this ties into a video that I watched by CGP Grey. But he recommends not doing resolutions.
Yeah, I have heard that
Let me
usually
pull up that video.
resolutions kind of backfire.
Yeah, and so he made a video. Oh my gosh, that's really loud. He made a video about 3 years ago that has changed my life over the last while. And I know, it feels like every time I talk to you, it just seems like I'm starting a new pyramid scheme because I'm all like, this thing changed my life forever. And it's nonstop every time we get together.
I
But
go through
I
that
swear to
cycle with
God.
books too, so it's like every book
So
that I
anyway,
pick up is the book, and then it's like a month later, this is the book. And yeah,
oh,
anyways,
speaking of books,
go for it.
I just finished this really decent book. I was not expecting it to be that good, but it's called Red Rising.
Oh man, I think I've heard of
Um,
that. That's like one of those World War
uh,
III scenario type stories, right?
no, it's
Oh.
not. So, no, this one is like if you took The Hunger Games and Game of Thrones and
Hmm.
mixed them together in a young adult novel.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and it takes place on Mars. Like it's
Oh.
far future sci-fi, but it takes like it's I when I heard that it was like, well, you've got this red faction who's at the very bottom of the totem pole and they act like slaves, and then one guy is chosen and he's gonna take over Mars and be the leader of Mars. I was like, yeah, okay, that sounds like schlock. I'm not gonna read that. Well, one of my former coworkers said, no, really, please, just check it out.
Hmm.
And I checked it out and I did not regret it.
Okay. Well, I will have to look into that because that's something that I've been thinking about lately is that, like most of what I read is informative material and like sometimes, especially if I'm like feeling stressed out and my brain is overloaded, like the last thing that I want is to dump more information in. So like,
Yeah.
but I've also been noticing that, and this was something that came up actually with Ravenfield, like I was brought up just a minute ago, is that something that I've been talking about with my therapist is like, why do I get stuck in like these kind of addiction kind of frames of mind with some games and stuff? And so the thing that I realized just yesterday is, oh wait a second, there is something that I can do to like, just kind of tune out. What's the word I'm looking for here? To just kind of have that zone out where your mind isn't thinking about anything. And I was like, wait a second, I could also read books or draw or stuff like that. I don't have to be on a piece of technology every time that I want to just check out for a bit.
Right.
So that sounds like a book that I'll want to check out because that's been one of the problems I've had lately is anytime that I pick up a novel, it's usually like, how do I put it? Like there was this one that I picked up just a little bit ago. It was a Mossad thriller. And I'm like, okay, all this is really good, but if I'm trying to relax, reading a book about, assassinations and stuff like that is not exactly in that line.
Not really good for your mental psyche.
Yeah. Yeah, so like that book, the Joel Rosenberg book that I think I gave you, either gave it to you or recommended it to you. Yeah, it's along those sort of lines. It's almost identical to that style of writing, and I'm going, this is an interesting story, but this is just not what I need given the conditions.
Mm.
So that's what I've been thinking about is, because lately the only thing I've had to read that's fiction that would be more in that low-key area is actually some Amish novels that my sister had from high school, and I'm like, okay, this feels kind of goofy, but they're not bad. So I'm just thinking that like maybe young adult fiction would be more along the lines of what I need for what I'm looking for.
Oh yeah, something easy reading that
Yeah.
doesn't need to be anything. What's really funny is I actually, so tying kind of back into your theme. So just to, I guess I'm gonna tell a small story and then I'll lead into what I've been working on for the past year-ish.
Okay.
So the video that I sent you, he basically says like New Year's resolutions always fail, and it's because you're too direct with what you want.
Hmm.
The key to a good resolution or whatever is to have something that's just a generic I want to be healthier. And so
Hmm.
then you can start making your way, and he basically makes the point that like you're not going to just switch on a dime. You need
Right.
to start making small decisions that eventually change your life for the better.
Hmm.
And so he says, well, if you start with a year, a theme of, creativity or of health or
Hmm.
of bettering yourself or whatever, then as you go along and make some small decisions, you can be like, okay, well, between the choices between an apple and a bag of chips, I chose the apple.
Right.
Congratulations, you just succeeded in your theme.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Light
and
bulb
so
moment.
you
Yeah.
can, yeah, you can more easily uh, sorry, choosing a different Proton version. You can more easily say, hey, I have kept fulfilling my theme over the course of the year.
Hmm.
Except Gray actually recommends that like a year is a long time. So instead of a full year, do like 3 months, and that's your
Hmm.
season.
Oh,
So your
okay.
season is going to be your theme. And so let's say like you want to start off the year trying to get healthy so that you can get your summer bod, as the kids would say. Um, so you start eating healthy and maybe you work out every so often. You're just trying to improve your life. Or you can go for a full year if it's something that's a long time. So like for me, my season right now, so from January to March, is I'm gonna start learning. There's some things that I think that would help me at work, and
Hmm.
so I'm gonna start like studying and learning. And so the more that I learn, the more I'm gonna contribute to that theme.
Hmm.
Last year, from basically March until I'm still kind of working on it, but it was a year of creation. And so
Hmm.
I basically wrote a book, a young adult novel kind of thing, from start to finish. I finished the rough draft. I think it's 24, 26 chapters, something like
Oh,
that.
wow.
I think it's 24 chapters. I'm still like working out some of the shorter chapters and making them a little bit longer, but
Hmm.
it's very very simple. But it's the first long work I've ever finished,
Cool. That sounds like fun.
and it doesn't have any twists and turns. It does well. I guess it has a couple of small ones, but nothing like life changing or anything like
Hmm.
that. It's a very simple like romance style. Um,
Okay.
So yeah, like if you want to just turn your brain off for a little while, I can send you the rough copy,
Okay.
and hopefully it's readable.
Okay. Well, that sounds better. I'm sure it would probably turn out better than what I would create because I've been like, this has been going on for like 5 or 6 years now, where it's like I will just repeatedly keep coming back to the same ideas over and over, like
Hmm.
with the idea of writing a novel. And I came to the realization one day that like every single character and event that I was coming up with was actually connected to some sort of past trauma. And then I'm like, okay,
Mm.
I don't think this is really what I want to be doing as far as like creativity, because I am basically just reenacting trauma over and over again, and this really isn't creative. This is actually just keeping me in the same spot. So I'm not sure.
Uh,
Go ahead.
I would actually disagree. I would
Oh,
say
okay.
that by writing out your past trauma and putting it on the page, you're working through and saying like this is how the character is going through this, and so by your own self trying to get through those or figuring out what to do in order to deal with your past trauma, you
Hmm.
can help your characters. So your characters help you. It's
Oh,
basically as a form of therapy.
interesting. Okay.
And so you
Go
you
on.
can decide to be like, I don't want to share this with people, but at
Mm-hmm.
least putting those words on the page can
Hmm.
actually help you process those emotions
Oh,
and
okay.
end up being better mentally because you're dealing with that.
Okay, well, from that angle, maybe I'll give it another shot then. Because I
Yeah,
was just
so I would go for it.
Yeah, I was just sitting there like in the back of my mind going, this is just garbage because I'm just, dumping out all this trauma on the page and everything. I'm like, and to be fair, like thinking about the actual substance of the stories, I'm looking at it going, the actual content is remarkably boring, but it feels significant because of because of the experience that it came from. And so I'm just sitting there like, I suppose like thinking about what you were saying of, I can write it, I don't have to share it.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same thing as like what most people do with journaling is they just dump down what they did for that day.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, you're basically dumping your past trauma onto the page, but you're saying that it's somebody else. And so even though it was you, like every single character is a part of you. And so by you're basically giving away that trauma. Well, not really giving it away, but basically saying this is freeing me. I'm giving it to this character, and this character is going to live on past me. And then if you really wanted to be symbolic, you could print out the pages and then toss it in a fire and be like, this is no longer like that gets into a psychological thing. But I would highly recommend I would highly recommend writing it out, even if you think that it's boring or whatever, because it's letting your mind process through that past trauma. It's letting yourself heal. Because, like, believe it or not, when you have a wound, like you cut yourself, if you put a bandage on it, it's not actually healing, or it's healing slower than it would if you had left it out. The reason why we put a bandage on it is so that it keeps the dirt and stuff out. But if you really want that to heal faster, you're not going to put a bandage on it. When we have our emotional trauma, we tend to put it behind, we hide it, we put a bandage over it. But you really need to let it out and do that in a healthy way. And so writing that, putting it on the page is that healthy way. That's taking off the bandage, letting it air out, letting the blood clot and then eventually scar over, and then eventually your skin becomes more resilient.
Well, and that's interesting that you mentioned backing up to something else that you'd said about, each character is a part of you. And that's something that, like, and it's also flowed into like drawing and stuff like that too. Like yesterday I sat down and because I've been cycling like artistically the same thing of cycling through the same sets of characters, and they are characters that relate to those stories. And so yesterday I actually was like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to draw something not in that category for a change. And the thing that I realized is, I did end up drawing something that was actually different from what I had been cycling through. But the thing that stood out to me though was that ultimately I cannot really get away from myself, if you want to put it that way, in the sense that whatever I still come out with is going to be the byproduct of something that I'm already thinking about. So like the thing that I was aiming at was, okay, I'm going to draw something that's not what I've drawn before. And so like I knew what I did not want to draw, but I did not know what I did want to draw. And then what I ended up drawing, well, the funny thing was I was like, okay, I'm going, as it started taking form, I'm like, okay, I think I'm drawing Applejack now, and then it turned into Fluttershy, and I'm just sitting there like, well, I guess I still came out with something that was me, it was just some other form of expressing myself. Yes, I still watch that show, per professional recommendation, believe it or not.
There's definitely nothing wrong with that.
So, yeah, like, actually, and by professional recommendation, I mean my therapist actually told me, go watch that show, it is good for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, there are definitely some kid shows out there that are, they're pushing out some really good stuff for teaching kids how to, like, process through emotions. It wouldn't surprise me, actually, if she told you to start watching Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood as well.
I've never heard of that one. What is that?
Oh, So it's basically an animated form. Well, so you know Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood?
Oh, okay.
I mean, obviously, you know, we've talked
Oh, I
about
think
him.
you have mentioned this.
Yeah, so they made an animated version of Daniel Tiger, and they call it Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood.
Hmm.
And they basically continue on with Mr. Rogers'
Hmm.
style of teaching, but they just put it to an animation, and so that it's got the character Daniel Tiger, and sometimes there's silence, and they just kind of go through and teach kids how to process their
Interesting.
emotions better.
That is really cool.
Uh, It's actually really funny because, like, there are times. Well, so I don't remember where I learned this, but basically the whole reason why kids throw a tantrum is because they don't have the words or the
Mm.
emotional capability to explain why they're upset and tell them why, or tell their parents or guardians what they want. And so
Okay.
they break down multiple times because there's the breakdown of communication, which makes them
Mm-hmm.
frustrated. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's they don't know how to tell about their frustration, and so they get more frustrated, and so
Yep.
they just go into a full tantrum. And I realized that, like, as adults, even sometimes we don't have the words or the vocabulary to explain things. And so I've actually, like, in my when I train people, I try to give them the vocabulary, and I try to, like, tell them, hey, this is a thing, and here's the
Mm-hmm.
vocabulary. And then sometimes I realize, well, sometimes they're either not going to pick up on the vocabulary because it's kind of techie,
Mm.
or I just didn't go over this vocabulary with them, and so they might not know. And so I actually, just the other day, I said, I don't know if you have the vocabulary for the answer that I'm looking for, so I'm just going to tell you what it is. And you're like, if I kind of see that you're picking it up, then you're good to go, I guess. But
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, for sure, just being able to process through that, letting your brain work through it. It's kind of along um, the same thought process as, like, when you're bored, the best thing to do is actually to not distract yourself
Mm.
and figure out, maybe not necessarily the cause of your boredom, but, like, think about your life and the things that you need to do.
Mm.
One of the big things about our generation right now and the younger generations is that they see boredom as a bad thing. And
Mm.
I'm going to defer to the experts on this one, but Dr. K has a video about boredom and why it's not actually bad, and how once you get bored and you figure out either the cause of the boredom, or you go through all those negative thoughts that you're trying to push back, because,
Mm.
like, that's why people are primarily busy, is to push back the negative thoughts. Once you work through those, you can actually focus on who you actually are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why we're seeing that, like, I don't know who I am, I'm having a crisis
Mm.
across it all. Like, we're throwing ourselves at TikTok or at
Mm.
Twitter or Facebook or whatever. And so getting to that boredom, taking a walk in a park, returning back to, if you would call it, traditional boredom cleansers or whatever. Just being allowing yourself to be alone with your thoughts
Mm-hmm.
and working through the negative thoughts. Why are you having those negative thoughts if you do? Um, it's almost a self-therapy, kind of.
Well, and
Not as good as an actual therapist, but it
right.
does help you, like, process through.
Well, that's interesting because I've been thinking about that exact subject lately. Because one of the things that I found, so I had been playing that game Ravenfield, and like, I was by definition becoming addicted to it, as in, like,
Mhm.
losing sleep, not being able to focus, and stuff like that. And one of the things that I noticed was that I would start having thoughts in my mind of, I feel bored at work, and then I was like, work is not boring. This is something that I love doing, but I feel bored because I am not constantly getting that stimulation of, action constantly going. And for the last 2 days, I think I am recovered now, but for 2 days after I quit the game, my brain was literally going through a withdrawal where I felt high levels of anxiety at just sitting still and not doing anything. And like the thing that helped me to kind of work through that, and I'm trying to think how to put that, is not necessarily working through the withdrawal, but being able to sit with the uncomfortable, was that I was sitting there going, no, I'm not bored, I'm calm. Just because there is no activity doesn't mean that there is something wrong in my life or anything like that. It's like, no, just sitting with nothing happening can actually be a good thing.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good thought. I like that.